All right, time for another Q&A. So just moving into a new place here, got a new backdrop. Super grateful to be here. Um, just getting to this a little bit later than normal, but I'll rattle off these questions really quick so I can still provide this content here. So starting off with tips to help gallbladder pain, already lowered fat intake, family history of gallbladder removal. So I kind of want to be blunt here and say removing your gallbladder is a terrible idea. You will be a lifelong issues with removing your gallbladder when it is extremely unnecessary. So when we have a lot of gallbladder pain, we can see congested bile flow. We can see gallstone formations and things like that. But a lot of times, like they'll do scans, they won't see gallstones. One, the gallstones could go really missing. But two, the pain is coming because there's bacteria and there's parasites and there's mold and there's all these things within the gallbladder that are leading to this inflammation, leading to this pain and this inability to flow, plus the systemic effect of most likely having poor vagal tone and not being able to get healthy gallbladder contractions, or just thick and sluggish bile from stress and infections and not enough water and electrolytes and all sorts of things like that. And so number one is look at your stress. That's number one, because that vagus nerve is so responsible for stimulating those gallbladder contractions. So make sure you're gargling, meditating, catching the sun, grounding, all those things to stimulate vagal tone, maybe some GABA, some selling, things like that. Improve that vagal tone to improve those gallbladder contractions. Now you can look at castor oil packs. You put them on obviously the right side underneath the rib cage where the gallbladder is located. That can decrease that inflammation, allowing that bile to flow. Do be cautious though, because that gallbladder could be holding on to a lot of toxins. So if you do too much castor oil right away, you could mobilize too many toxins, leading to a Herxheimer's reactions and just not feel great. You're okay, you're just not going to feel great. You could look at TUDCA, TUDCA. Doing some TUDCA can really help thin the bile, add new existing bile, dissolve gallstones, things like that. So that one's really good. That's just taurine with bile salts. You could also look at far end glycolysis training. So HIIT training, high intensity interval training. So like 20 seconds as hard as you can on a spin bike, rest for 60 seconds and do that a total of 4 times. That hyperoxygenation of the cells can really stimulate bile movement. So there are many, many things that a person could do. Lowering your fat, though, is not a good idea. I understand where that's coming from, because if you lower the fat intake, you require less bile for that fat absorption, emulsification. But the problem is those fats, as long as they're healthy fats, like if you're lowering fat intake because they're trans fats, processed, whatever, but healthy fats are how you repair the membranes and rebuild the cells so your body can do what it needs to do, so you no longer have gallbladder problems. So you don't want to lower fat intake. You want to support that gallbladder through the previous ways mentioned. And so you look at bitters too. Dr. Shades, I believe it's called, has a really good bitters, dandelion teas. So bitters go a long way. HCl, even like hydrochloric acid supplementation, because you need adequate levels of HCl. I think I mentioned this in a previous Q&A. You need adequate levels of HCl in order to stimulate gallbladder contractions. Think of it like a switch. So there's a lot of things a person could do, but also look at your infections. Like, look, is there mold? Maybe you need binders. Maybe you need to pull some of that bile out. Maybe you need to go after parasites. Mold's a really big one that slows it down. You said he, so it's a male, so it's not going to be an estrogen problem. But I mean, it could. There are men who have high estrogen, so look at the estrogen, possibly obesity and things like that. But in women, just because we're on the topic, estrogen, I think I mentioned it once again in another Q&A, has quite a negative impact on the gallbladder. So make sure you're detoxifying your estrogen and you're reducing your environmental load of estrogen. So that's how men tend to have higher levels of estrogen, possibly over aromatizing testosterone, but it's usually because of the xenobiotics and everything found in their environment. So there are many, many things a person could do rather than remove the gallbladder. So I would start with maybe some bitters, some HCl, supporting that vagal tone, gargling waters, the meditations, the grounding, the sunlight, circadian rhythm stuff, all the previous stuff mentioned you can find on my page and everything. Do all that. Add some TUDCA in, maybe some bitters, all that kind of stuff. And you can really support the gallbladder there. As mentioned, castor oil packs, but just start with like 10 minutes and whatnot. But it's usually an oxygen issue too. So really look at ways of improving oxygen. So make sure you're always nasal breathing in and out. when you're exercising, nasal breathing. So for example, if you're doing that high intensity interval training, if you can nasal breathe that entire time, you're going to increase the amount of CO2 in your body, which delivers that oxygen. And that can really help the gallbladder and with bile flow and whatnot, reducing that pain. But it's probably going to be an inflammatory aspect of like bacteria and stuff in there. So doing infectious protocols, and realistically, there are thousands of things, not thousands, but there's a ton of things you could do. There's zero reason to remove a gallbladder, zero reason. Maybe out there, but in most cases, there's no reason to remove the gallbladder. Hopefully that helps. Less or more fiber for people with ulcerative colitis. Examples, please. So this is very contextual, and this is more of a trial and experiment thing. A lot of people want more fiber. Fiber has a lot of benefits. Now, granted, you're gonna have there's so many opposing views. Fiber's bad for you. Fiber's good for you. Carnivore says don't ever eat fiber because it does this, it does that. It's extremely contextual. So if you have like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, fiber is gonna really bother you. So you want to take care of the SIBO first, then you can start implementing some fiber. 30 grams. I should say like everyone should be on 30 grams. I think they have rules like per 1,000 calories, you should have X amount of fiber and stuff. I think it's way more nuanced than that when it comes to fiber. Do I think fiber is necessary? I do. Like, I think everybody should be having fiber, and it's going to help with detoxification, with binding. It can help feed, the good bacteria. But as mentioned, it can also feed bad bacteria. So it's more of a trial and experiment. Eat fiber and see how you do. And if you don't tolerate fiber, don't blame it on fiber. Don't just say fiber's bad. Maybe I should go carnivore. Look at it from a perspective of why is this fiber causing symptoms? Probably overgrowth of bad bugs, who knows, candida, stuff like that. You'd really want to look into that. Poor motility, because then that fiber could sit there and everything could ferment because it can slow down gastric emptying and just the rate that everything travels through the GI tract. So it could be just a motility issue, so a nervous system issue. So this one, I wish I could provide a better answer. I think everyone should be eating fiber and maybe around 30 grams of fiber daily, but it can be extremely contextual. I have some people that we go like zero fiber to start with, work on the bacterias, get some of the hydrogen down, hydrogen peroxide and stuff like that, till they can tolerate more fiber. Because that's another thing too. Like if you're someone who doesn't tolerate fiber, a gauge for you to see if you're improving is, can you handle more fiber? And so just slowly try to implement fiber. Anywhere from 30 to 40 grams of fiber daily should be more than enough for most people. And so I don't think it's a matter of less or more because you have a disease. I think it's just what can you tolerate? And if not, figure out why you can't tolerate it. But if you can get up to 30, 40 grams, I think you're golden. And examples, like, I think that's more personal. Like a lot of times, okay, so let's look at the context of people not being able to handle fiber. Psyllium husk. Most people can handle psyllium husk pretty well. Not everyone. I've had a lot of people with negative reactions, but for the most part, psyllium husk is the best place to start. I say powder form, not pill, because you have to take so many pills to get the right dosage. Mix it into a shake or something like that. There's so many types of fibers out there. Just fruits and veggies, realistically. Like, I think fiber gets overcomplicated. That's because people don't understand the context of a lot of situations. So for examples, I think it's just personal, like what you like most. I love blueberries, cherries, broccoli, green beans, carrots. When I eat all those, I get enough fiber. Stomach feels great. So personal dependent, I think, when it comes to examples. Thoughts on prenatal vitamins. I do not like them. And the reason being is because most vitamins, multivitamins, prenatal vitamins, etc., are all marketing. They're just marketing. It's like, hey, look, it's got more folate in it, or it's got more of this, or look at all these other added ingredients for antioxidants and so on and so forth. I actually have witnessed a prenatal vitamin containing an ingredient that can push the immune system to TH1, which is the catabolic side, which can literally cause a miscarriage. I don't remember which one that was because I'll never ever recommend it, but it's just marketing. It's like, because this nutrient has been deemed as like really good for the immunity and everything. So let's put it in a multivitamin, not understanding that a woman's immune system needs to shift the other way. It needs to do this in order to become anabolic and not eat away at the fetus, because that's one of the most common causes of miscarriage in the first, 9 weeks, is the immune system didn't shift from a catabolic state to an anabolic state. So from a marketing perspective, they're just putting big fancy nutrients in there so you buy it. And I would never recommend a prenatal. I think you should just eat organ meat, I think would be the best. I know most people are not into organ meat. There are like primal blends out there where you can go 90% ground beef, 10% organ, or you can do all the way to 30 or 70% ground beef and 30% organ. And that's what I eat every day. Or you could just look at an organ supplement. You could look at an organ supplement and phosphatidylcholine. I think that would be really great. Gets very nuanced if you should be supplementing other things that you think would be found in a prenatal, but the organ supplement's going to have all the B vitamins. There's like spirulina and chlorella and stuff like that. Once again, this is just educational purposes, no medical advice, anything. Always check with your doctor and whatnot. But I think just an organ supplement or eating organ meats and phosphatidylcholine are super, like the phosphatidylcholine itself, sorry, is like a huge staple in pregnancy. You absolutely must be doing it before even conceiving, during conception, during the term, everything. Phosphatidylcholine is so unbelievably important when it comes to pregnancy. And this is why we're seeing this epidemic of children being born with birth defects, and just generation after generation, we're getting sicker and sicker. Yes, our society, our environment, but also so many people are low in phosphatidylcholine, and not to pick on anyone but the mothers, because the baby is going to inherit the mitochondria from the mother. So phosphatidylcholine is super, super important. And maybe like an organ supplement if you're not open to eating organ meats. So thoughts on prenatals? Nope. I think they're a big no. I used to recommend them, like Baby and Me Too and stuff. But once again, it's just a lot to do with marketing. There's too many ingredients in there. You don't know what's going to do what. Could be infliction with certain things. And so organ supplement, phosphatidylcholine, and then body bile PC or NT factors for the phosphatidylcholine. And then like there's so many organ supplements out there. I just say like a complete, like I think Organ Synergy from Designs for Health is a good one. Stuff like that. Do I need to take supplements to improve my immune system? I mean, no, maybe. It's person dependent, right? It depends on your environment, depends on your stress, all sorts of things. So if you're working an extremely stressful job, probably. If you are in a moldy environment, probably, right? If you're just meh, as long as you're getting sunshine and you're grounding and you're doing all these things, probably not. You probably don't need to take that. Or, but if you're working with children and everybody's always sick around you, probably. So, no, I guess is the answer. Do I need to take supplements to improve my immune system? But does that mean you're going to be able to do it without supplements? It's context dependent. So it just depends on your situation if you need to or not. Once again, like you could actually get a lot of immune support by improving redox, by grounding, drinking structured water, and getting sunlight, sunrise, UVA, things like that. You can make a huge thing. And while I'm thinking about that, kind of been a theme this past week. So when people start doing stuff like that, like getting sunlight, so on and so forth, I've had many people get sick and they're like, dude, what the hell? Like, I thought you said this was going to make me better. And it is, because when your immune system is tired, a lot of infections are going under the radar. They're not being picked up. They're not being recognized by the immune system, like Epstein-Barr virus, for example. And they say like 95% of the population has Epstein-Barr virus. So you start to improve the immune system, you start to hire more guards and increase and, add more security cameras and improve your surveillance. You start finding these infections. So your body's like, oh, hey, look, we see it now. So let's start producing inflammation. So you're getting sick because you found an infection that's always been there, that's been causing problems underneath the surface, right? So just know that because you do that and you get sick does not mean it's bad and you're working the other way. You're actually improving. You just have to go through that transition period of getting rid of that infection, because you getting sick is a completely normal, super important part of your physiology. So when you get sick, do not medicate. Like the common cold and stuff like that. Like, once again, I shouldn't say that. I got to be careful. But most of the time we take Tylenols or whatever and we blunt it, right? If you just, deep breaths, suck it up if you can, and try to fight that naturally, because your immune system is just doing what it was designed to do. So anyways, if you get sick going outside, it's part of the process. But do I need to take supplements to improve my immune system? Very person dependent, very contextual, environment, stress, etc. Why do I get sick but my partner doesn't? So this is a you problem then. Just what I mean by that is, if everyone in the household gets sick all the time, it's an environmental thing. So, it'd be one thing if the mother and the children got sick, then it could have been something inherited from the mother. But if the whole family, mother, father, children, everybody gets sick, people visit and they get sick, that's the environment, obviously, whether there's mold or too many EMFs or radon or whatever, there's something in that environment. If you're the only one in that environment getting sick, it's something within your body, most likely. Like, it can still be the environment. You are just much more vulnerable to the environment. So there could be mold, but your partner isn't, he, she, whatever, has got a healthy body and they can tolerate the mold in that environment, but you can't because you have other underlying things. Genetics can play a role, yes, not as big as we think, but they definitely can play a role. And so when it's only you getting sick in that environment, you got to look within yourself. Okay, what is causing immunosuppression? Or what is taking away my ability to tolerate whatever is in this environment? And so look deep. Mold is a huge causation of immune suppression because one, like the immune system constantly just exerting itself trying to fight mold, but two, the mold can also activate TGF beta, which activates T regulatory cells, which then suppresses the immune system too much. So just it has a mechanism to suppress the immune system. And so mold is a really big one. You hear that all the time, like people constantly getting sick and then they end up finding mold in their home. But it could not be mold in your home. It could be the mold within your body from eating foods or whatever, or previous exposures, or it could be just enough mold to affect you, but not to affect your partner. So when it comes to only you getting sick and not your partner, it's definitely, or it's most likely not the environment. It's what you're dealing with and stressors and traumas and previous infections and so on and so forth, poor mitochondrial function, etc. So that's most likely what it is. Once again, if everybody's getting sick, and I hear that all the time, I work with really sick people, and then a lot of times their children are sick too. Maybe the father isn't. Men can sometimes be more resilient in these cases, depending what it is. But look into your environment then. But if it's only you getting sick, look into yourself. If that makes sense. So hopefully that answered those well enough, everybody. It's a little bit of scatterbrain, just still getting settled here and whatnot. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments or DM me. And yeah, see you on the next one.